Hey there, Danny Woodburn here.
Terry Hartman Squire here.
And my partner, Terry Hartman Squire, and I'm her partner in
He's
crime.
my partner. Howdy, partner.
Exactly. Howdy. I'll do an audio description of myself. I am a white male, bearded little person with the hairline of a cruise ship captain. And I'm wearing a shirt that I would call Spanish roof tile in color. And Terry?
Spanish roof tile. That's the best you got.
That's the color of my shirt. I wanted to give it a physical description as opposed to a visual one.
Okay, well, I think it's salmon color. Hi, I'm Terry Hartman Squire, Danny's partner, and I have dark black, kind of straight hair. It's good hair day today, and a purple sweater. And I am coming to you from Los Angeles in what used to be Chumash country. Welcome.
Chumash. And Terry and I are producers of the ADA Lead-On Productions, which you can see numerous versions of over the last year. The most recent being about non-apparent disability. And that is what our panel is about today.
Yes, and we're pretty excited. We started ADA Lead-On Productions during the pandemic. We were going to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act at the Kennedy Center, but COVID had a different plan. So as Danny said, we've produced 6 different shows, all 100% people with disabilities in front of and behind the camera. So 158 emerging and established talent, some of which you will meet today, that were involved in ADA 31. So we're starting. I was
going to say that one of the reasons we did that was because as Terry and I have been doing this over the last year, we both have learned a lot about our own community. And one of the things we wanted to focus on was the folks with non-apparent disability, because there are stigmas and some elements of exclusion even within our own community. So we wanted to give that a voice, and you are going to hear more of that voice today.
And we were able to do that because of our investors and sponsors, some of which also support ReelAbilities Film Festival. So we're going to roll a video of one of our sponsors, ADA 31, Comcast, NBC Universal. Then we'll come back and we will thank our other sponsors and introduce you to Dominik Evans, who will moderate this panel. Roll video.
You don't look disabled. Were you cured? My name is Josephine Biela, and I'm a web producer for CNBC. I'm probably not the only person with a non-apparent disability to receive that question. What most people don't realize is that 70% of disability is not obvious to others. As I've become more comfortable with sharing the truth of my human experience at work, I've learned that I'm not alone. Both supervisors and peers have opened up to me about their own physical and mental health challenges. Speaking my truth has allowed others to do the same. I've found personal freedom and liberation by sharing my stories. I've opened hearts and minds and helped others realize that they too should treat their human journey with great care and compassion. I've also realized that my own internalized feelings of shame, unworthiness, and fear are the very things that help fuel ignorance and intolerance. So set yourself free. Be true to nature by being fully and unapologetically you. And finally, I'd like to send a big thank you to my employer, Comcast NBC Universal, for supporting ADA 31 Lead On, a celebration that recognizes people with non-apparent disabilities. Thank you so much for watching.
So in addition to Comcast, NBC Universal, we wanted to thank AT&T, Facebook, Google, Sony Pictures Entertainment, and Viacom CBS for their investment in ADA Lead-On Productions and Lights Camera Access. And we also want to encourage all of you that are out there that are aspiring filmmakers and storytellers with disabilities to reach out to us so that you can be included in other productions. So we're going to introduce.
I just wanted to also thank 2 of our sponsors for the ReelAbilities Film Festival as well, Warner Media, a top line sponsor, and Comcast, NBC Universal as well for this.
Thank you. And with that, with all of those sponsors and investors, everyone that worked on the shows with Danny and I were paid and have their IMDb page for each of the shows. So we're excited about that and are entering into our database for future employment within the industry. So ADA 31, Dominik Evans and the panel will open up their cameras as we just say their names. They'll introduce themselves, describe themselves. Hey, Dominik is going to share his groundbreaking research, and we will put the link in the chat. Dominik is a director, an editor, the Crip Crusader, and one of our mentors and leaders in the disability community. Anita Cameron was the consulting producer for ADA 31. Trelanda Lowe was our post-production supervisor. Nina G was a co-MC with Mean Dave. Dylan Lazaga entered his student film and also was on Tree's editing team. And Gwyn, LaRee provided some hilarious talent for ADA 31. So take it away, Dom.
Thanks, Terry and Danny. So hi, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dominik Evans. To give you a description of myself, I am a white person. You probably can't tell I have long, dark hair because I'm laying on it. I am laying down. I'll explain about why in a little bit. I'm wearing, it's supposed to be green, but it looks kind of teal in the light. It's like a polo with a few buttons at the collar. And in the background, you can see that I have a black wheelchair. I'm laying down on a bed with brown, it looks like a brown sheet covering it. And I am multiply disabled. I am transgender, non-binary, and I am bisexual. I work in Hollywood. I do a lot of consulting work, particularly in relation to disability. I recently worked on the documentary introducing Selma Blair. I've worked with Lionsgate, and I don't just do script consultation. I do every form of consulting you can think of, from pre-production through the final production, letting producers know if their content is helpful or harmful, if it's going to cause a problem for the disabled community and cause harm to us. I help with casting. I help writers and directors. And I also recently directed something from my home here in Michigan, which is where I live, remotely. It was filmed in Hollywood. I was here in my bed directing. It is a groundbreaking thing. It is one of the things that the pandemic has actually shown us, that people like me who can't always get out and about, or can't get out to Hollywood, or can't travel because of lack of accommodations, can still direct and participate in all aspects of production that we are capable of. So that was really exciting, and I'm excited for everybody to check out that work very soon. I also do an annual study into disability representation on television through what I call FilmDis. FilmDis was started around 2014. It started as a Twitter discussion into media representation of disability. We talked about everything from film to new media. We did interesting discussions on cybernetics and how tech can influence disability, how it can both help and harm, for example. We've covered everything, including non-apparent disabilities. And I'm going to explore some of that data right after this intro I'm giving to you. I also want to mention a little bit about my activism work. The big thing right now for me is the marriage equality for disabled people movement right now. I've been working on this for almost 20 years. I've been with my partner for almost 20 years, and we will never be able to get married because all of that is tied to my health care. And without my health care, I won't live. So I don't have the choice to get married. And that's a struggle a lot of disabled people are facing right now. So that's where my activism work has been. But I also have worked on reproductive issues for disabled and LGBT people. And I do a lot with intersectionality as someone who lives at the intersection of gender and disability and sexuality. I was a part of ADA 31 for Non-Apparent Disabilities production. You probably saw me telling an unfortunate joke that kind of fell flat. I don't usually do jokes that other people write for me, and it probably was my horrible delivery of it, but we'll just forget about this. This is a new day, right? This is a new production right here. But that's not why I brought up being a part of that production. I brought up being a part of that because so many people came to me afterward and said, why? You have a visible disability. Why are you a part of this? We don't get it, Dom. Are you overstepping your space? And I said, wait a minute. I spoke about all this work I do in disability, and I didn't talk about myself. I didn't say that I had not one, but multiple non-apparent disabilities, that many of us with visible disabilities face a lot of challenges because we have multiple disabilities. I like to joke that as I get older, I am 40 years old. And as I hit 40, I like to say, I collect my disabilities like I collect Pokemon. I got to catch them all. But that's just a little joke. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 39. I went to my therapist to get diagnosed with what I thought was PTSD. I do have PTSD, and that's a common thing that those of us that are multiply marginalized do have as a non-apparent disability. Due to abuse I received. The worst was medical abuse I received being trans, led to PTSD and flashbacks and things like that. I also have OCD and anxiety, and I'm hard of hearing. All of my disabilities that are non-apparent, I acquired for different reasons. My dad was deaf, and I'm hard of hearing because I'm a CODA. And I have the genetic, I inherited hearing loss from my father. I acquired my OCD and PTSD and anxiety based on mistreatment as a disabled and trans and queer person. And my ADHD I was born with and was terribly failed. And I could talk for an entire year on how quote unquote little girls are failed with ADHD diagnoses, because that's what I was at the time. They didn't know I was trans. I didn't know I was trans, and they did not diagnose me until I was 39 because they don't diagnose quote unquote little girls. And finally, I also have chronic pain. That's why I'm laying down here, and it's more comfortable. For a long time, I forced myself to get in my wheelchair and come to events, and I was in agonizing pain. I thought about the whole time I was presenting and talking, I would think, gosh, it's only 10 minutes to get in bed. It's only 30 minutes to get in bed. You know, the whole time I was not thinking about what I was doing. I was thinking about how much pain I was in. And now I'm not thinking about pain because I'm laying here. I'm also a Twitch streamer, and I started streaming laying down because I didn't see representation of that. My non-apparent disability led to visual representation. What do you think about that? It's not always apparent what is visual and what is not when it comes to disability. And that can lead to a lot of people doubting those of us with disabilities. A non-apparent disability may manifest in visual visual ways as mine has, as you see me laying down, because my chronic pain, which you can't see, is with me all the time. And I do what I got to do to be comfortable and be able to be more independent. You'd be surprised what I've been able to do from bed. Terry can attest. She took me to the White House from bed. I got to drive around the White House in a robot when President Obama was there. And, you know, I've just had so many opportunities because people looked past the fact that I was stuck in bed and said, Dominik's capable of so much more. We need to do this for all disabled people. So I want to get into the research a little bit. Everything I do is from an intersectional lens, and this research is not any different. Our study into representation of television includes everything you could ever want to know about disability representation. Our paper is 70 pages, but we have a 3-page fact sheet, which is much easier for all of you to view. But if you ever wanted to know everything you could about disability representation, I highly recommend reading our paper at filmdis.com, because what I mean by an intersectional lens is that I examined me and my partner. Her name is Ashton. She's a screenwriter. She's a bit shy about showing herself, so I usually do most of our presentations, but I could not do this without her. She tallied everything. We're talking, what we did was we watched 250 shows airing between March 2019 and April 1st, 2020. This was our second year. We examined a year of television. We watch as many shows as we can. We found that 218 of those 250 shows had some form of disability representation. That led to a total of 1,198 disabled characters played by 1,208 actors. And the reason there's that disparity is some characters are played at different ages. The show This Is Us is a great example. You have some characters played by 2 or 3 different actors, because you have the childhood, the teenager, and the adult version. So we have more actors, but Ashton totaled, over 1,000 characters. So big kudos out to Ashton. Thank you for all your hard work on this. We broke things down by every type of disability. We know what disabilities are represented, what disabilities aren't. We know what gender each character is, what their gender identity is, what their sexuality is, if they're an adult or child or teenager or elder, if they are actually disabled or engaging in disabled mimicry, if they are, what their nationality is, what their race is. We know everything about these characters. And what we discovered for non-apparent disabilities is that the most common disabilities represented are those dealing with alcoholism or another form of addiction. That was 214 of the characters. Chronic disabilities, which can include many non-apparent disabilities, everything from cancer to issues with your vital organs like heart trouble or liver failure, asthma, chronic pain, and the list goes on. We found 161. And disabilities relating to mental health, we found 111. The least represented non-apparent disabilities are deaf people. There were 31 deaf characters, and a major part of that was because of the show This Close, created by 2 deaf people, one of whom is Shoshana Stern. And without that show, we would have had way less deaf representation. Also, learning disabilities, there were only 10 characters of the over 1,100 characters that had learning disabilities. And finally, autistic people, there were only 15 autistic characters. Representation is overwhelmingly white overall, with the highest represented being white cisgender males. We found 503 white cisgender male characters, 21 of whom were LGBTQIA. 16 were gay, 4 were bisexual, and 1 was asexual. For cisgender white women, we found 334. 25 were LGBTQIA, 11 were lesbians, 13 were bisexuals, and 1 was gender nonconforming. It led to a total of 837 white characters out of 1,198 characters. That's ridiculous. It's abysmal that that's the numbers. What we found for non-white characters was troubling to me. We found that 101 were Black female characters, 99 cisgender, and 1 trans. 2 trans, I'm sorry, because it was 101. 99 cisgender, 2 trans. 6 of the characters were lesbians and 3 were bisexual for the cisgender characters. For the 2 trans characters, 1 was heterosexual and 1 was lesbian. So the trans characters had better representation than all the cisgender characters put together. For Black male characters, this just boggled my mind. I said 101 Black female characters, 102 Black male characters. That is 1 more. We watched 250 random shows. Random. We didn't it was the criteria was they had to be in the English language simply because it was easier for us to tally things in the language that is our first language. The show could have other languages, throughout, like shows occasionally have a second language, but they had to be primarily English speaking, and they had to be airing between this time period. That was the only criteria. And you're going to tell me that it's not a coincidence that there were 101 Black female characters and 102 Black male characters. For IPOC characters, that's Indigenous characters and other POC characters, we added them all up because there was not enough we also included each individual community. So there is a breakdown for that in our research, but combined, there were 79 male, 79 female. That just says to me that Hollywood is checking boxes when they're including multiply marginalized disabled people. For the IPOC male characters, all of them were cisgender and 5 were gay. That's the only LGBT representation for IPOC male characters. For IPOC female characters, 79 characters, 78 were cisgender, 1 was trans. The cisgender characters included a bisexual and a queer. So to me, that says how are they not checking boxes? That just is not random to me that we got the same totals almost extensively. And that means that we need to be including more multiply marginalized disabled people, particularly Black and brown disabled people who don't get represented unless it's in this specific little box. Lack of representation for Black and brown disabled people has a detrimental impact on the lives of Black and brown disabled people. Not seeing yourself represented can be devastating, but it can also render you that you're invisible, making it harder for you to get access to services. We know that Black and brown disabled people are more likely to be questioned about their disability. They're more likely to have to prove they're disabled, even more so than those of us that are white who struggle with having to prove we're disabled. They are also more likely to experience violence in relation to having a non-apparent disability. We see this a lot when it comes to police brutality. A lot of Black folks that end up dead or harmed in another way by the police have some form of non-apparent disability. We see this a lot with autistic Black folks and those with mental health-based disabilities. Eric Garner couldn't breathe because of a respiratory-based non-apparent disability, asthma. And COPD and other chronic breathing problems are non-apparent disabilities. They can be disabling and they can lead to your death. Freddie Gray was also disabled. He had developmental disabilities. When police harm Black and brown people, there's a good chance that these individuals have some form of disability, and it's probably non-apparent. And that brings me into this great discussion with our panel. Thank you all for listening to this research. I appreciate it. I want to start with an amazing person. Her name is Anita Cameron. All of this info that I learned was because of people like Anita. They taught me how to be intersectional with my work. I think about Anita all the time when I'm working, how I can be a better collaborator, how I can make sure that I'm using my white privilege in my research to ensure that Black and brown voices are uplifted and heard, and that Black and brown voices get a place at the table. Anita, please feel free to introduce yourself. It is such an honor that you are on this panel.
Well, thank you so much, Dominik. It is my honor to be on this panel. My name is Anita Cameron. I'm with you from Rochester, New York. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a Black woman with caramel colored skin, long locks. I have on white, and actually I have on headphones whose primary colors are white. The earpieces are red, but they're actually Pride earphones. So on the back of them are the Pride flag colors. And I'm wearing a blue shirt that says, "We must be the change we wish to see in this world," to quote from Mahatma Gandhi. And I think that's about it for me. I am a disability justice activist. I've been a social justice, social change activist for 40 years, disability rights activist for 35 years. I've done work with the LGBTQ community because I'm a proud and out lesbian. What else? Anything involving disability, I wind up doing. So, from voting rights to emergency preparedness. If it's got to do with folks with disabilities, I'm in there, trying to make this world, a better place for all of us, and particularly our multiply marginalized communities. And so I think I will stop there. Thank you. I'm excited about the panel. Yeah.
Thanks, Anita. And by the way, everyone, Anita has fought for all of our healthcare, all of us. Give thanks to Anita Cameron, because without her, we wouldn't have Medicaid. We wouldn't have many of the programs and services. We would not have the ADA. How many times have you been arrested protesting for all of us, Anita?
So I've been arrested 139 times in 5 years, all of it nonviolent civil disobedience related to fighting for healthcare access, fighting for the Americans with Disabilities Act. I participated in the Capitol crawl and the arrests and the takeover of the rotunda and the arrests that led to the signing of Americans with Disabilities Act. I've helped to write legislation for basic civil rights for people with disabilities that we can be in our homes rather than in nursing homes and other institutions. So, yeah, I don't talk about it that much because I don't want to seem like, I'm like tooting my own horn and whatnot. It's stuff, this is stuff that I've been called to do. And that as long as as long as I'm breathing, I'm going to lift up all forms of activism, whether we're out there in the trenches or doing it from our beds, from our phones, from our homes, wherever. So yeah, thanks, Dominic.
Thank you, Anita. And I'm going to toot your horn if you're not going to toot, girl. So. Next up, we have the amazing Trelanda Lowe. I got to meet Trelanda, or Tree. Coolest nickname ever, by the way. I love your name. I got to meet Tree through ADA 31. She is kick-ass on the production side for ADA 31. So Tree, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, my friend.
Sure. My name is Trelanda Lowe, but I go by Tree. I am an African-American woman. I'm wearing a colorful hijab. I'm wearing a tan sweater. Sitting behind me is my awards and accolades from school. I'm a mother, 25-year-old daughter. She's in grad school just as well as I am as well. I have ADHD, PTSD. I have also have other disabilities as addictions as well, drug and alcohol addiction. I have other disabilities, but I just kind of give you a quick overview of what I've gone through with those. As far as with my life itself, I have been pushing very hard to getting everyone to understand what my disability is, who I am, and not treat me as a disabled person, but just as me, my unique self. I would say I originally went to school when I was 18, stopped going to school for a bit, taking care of my kid. And I decided to try to find out what was going on with why I was struggling in school. And I was properly diagnosed with my disabilities. And ever since then, I went back to school at 40 and went from undergrad year to now I'm in grad school. And I'm really thankful and proud of myself that I'm still pushing along and being a strong representation of the community itself. And I'm also from the LGBT community as well.
Thanks, Tree. Is there anything you want to add about the production stuff you do?
Yes. I'm a post-production supervisor on ADA Lead on 31 and ADA 30. I also did the Black Feature Month as well. Other stuff I've done with this Facebook when I originally started with LCA was PA work. And even after that, I was working as social marketing as well, which I'm really proud to say, and really wonderful to be able to take on all those roles and be a kick-ass.
Great. Next up we have is one of the funniest disabled people I know, the amazing Nina G. I've been following her from afar for what seems like forever, and we finally get to work together. We got to work together on ADA 31, although we didn't really get to interact that much, but today we got to finally see each other and interact. Everybody, Nina G is an amazing comedian, and I'll let her tell you a little bit about herself.
Great, thank you. And it is wonderful to be joining all of you, and Dominik, especially you. We've been interacting for years and we've been in meetings, but I think this is the first time we've both been on camera and we have proof of this. So this is awesome. So thank you. And also it's really an honor to be part of this. I am a stand-up comedian who stutters and has dyslexia. I also have Crohn's, but it's pretty mild. But for now, my disabilities are stuttering and dyslexia, central auditory processing, and some executive function disabilities as well. I've been doing comedy for almost 12 years. I've also written a book called Stutter Interrupted, which is right next to me right here. And that reminds me, I need to describe who I am. I am a white woman from an Italian American background and have some of those features per my nose, if you see that. And I have shoulder length hair that is brown and straight. I'm wearing a flower dress with big unexplicit like bows that have no reason to be this big on my shoulder, but nonetheless they are there. Wait, put my hair in front of them. In my background, I have my book. I have a Porky Pig that has a history, which I won't get into. I also have the cupcake from Cabin Boy. If anybody knows that reference, to Dominik, you're probably the only one who does. Gwyn is shaking her head yes. And also a poster of Lenny Bruce. Anyway, going back to some of the work that I do, I work a lot I am in Oakland, so I'm not in the Los Angeles area. I'm not in the New York area. So I'm very much an outsider in the entertainment business. I have found that having non-apparent disabilities, there's a level of privilege that comes along with that. Oftentimes I find myself being the one who's invited for disabled representation on different stages, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's great, but how about if you also invite this person who's a wheelchair user along too? And I find that sometimes they invite me because they don't want to get a ramp, and I make them get a ramp in some other way. So there are lots of various issues that come along with this, but I think the biggest issue that comes along is representing our voices in an authentic way. And right now we have those opportunities because of social media. When I wrote my book, that was a big part of it. I also produced a album called Disabled Comedy Only, which is with my comedy troupe, the Comedians with Disabilities Act, which is available everywhere. So streaming if you have Pandora, but just available everywhere. But just really hoping that we can tell our stories in a way that isn't filtered through an able-bodied lens. And with that, also one thing that I've recently done and very proud of is that I was co-host of ADA 31 with one of my best friends, Mean Dave, who is in recovery and comes at disability from that point of view. We oftentimes travel to colleges and just got back from West Virginia University, where we did a gig there to spread disability awareness and hopefully getting past the awareness part and into acceptance and just it being more normalized. Right now, I'm also working with the British Stammering Association because they have a campaign going over there, and they're kind of like the edgiest of the stuttering organization. So I really love to work with them, but they're really trying hard to get more stuttering, or as they call stammering, into the airwaves on TV and film, and it not just being like, oh yeah, we're going to talk about stuttering, so here's a person who stutters, but it's like, oh, you're a climate expert and you stutter, you're going to be on the air, because those are the voices, those are the stuttering voices and stammering voices we need. And there is a petition. Thank you for putting that in the links. I appreciate that. And we are trying to get the BBC to do more, along with other areas of entertainment in the UK, and hopefully some of that spreads over to us, but we don't really have that kind of organization here, so going there to get to here. So thank you.
Thanks, Nina. Next up, we have another person I met through ADA 31, Dylan Lazaga. I'm sorry if I said your name wrong, Dylan.
Okay. So,
And would you like to tell everybody about the work you do? Because you do a lot of great production work as well.
Hello. My name is Dylan Lazaga. I am a content creator and video editor. As Dominik mentioned, I was one of the video editors for ADA 31 Lead On. I did a lot of great work with both Terry and especially Trelanda and Tree, and we did a lot of great work in putting together the show. It was such a great experience working and seeing all the projects that everyone did together in for that show, and it came out really well. We put up a great message for that show. As for myself, I am a Filipino American male. I'm wearing glasses. I have slick back hair. I'm wearing a blue, it's kind of like a plaid shirt. In the background, if the sun is not reflecting too much, I know it's been like that all throughout this panel, but in the background is two portraits. One is a portrait of my mother, who sadly is not here today. She passed away in 2012, but it's a portrait that I always remember her by. And another one is a portrait of the character from SpongeBob SquarePants, Squidward Tentacles. Some other things about myself. I was diagnosed with epilepsy in 2012. I had a seizure in almost 10 years ago while preparing for a school event, and I was struggling with it since. It was kind of like one of those life-changing events. Like, oh, what do I do? How do I go from place to place? Like, how do I approach like my life, especially with comes to my career as I got older. So I've been struggling with that for almost 10 years. I've also been struggling with stuttering since I was little. I've been in a variety of speech classes since elementary school. But other than that, I've been working on video projects. This first came about when I worked on home videos on YouTube, and then eventually over time it became a career passion for me, because I had so many things I was interested in that I wanted to do this for a living. And then when I got into college, it expanded, not just from video editing. I wanted to also do writing too. I also wanted to do podcasting. So that's what I really was passionate about. So I graduated from California State University East Bay with a bachelor in communication in journalism. And right now I'm just I'm still looking for an opportunity to find a start with in media. I'm currently working on my own projects to build myself up. So it is great to be here with you all today to talk about non-apparent disabilities.
Thanks so much, Dylan. And last but not least, we have Gwyn, and hopefully I get your name right as well. Gwyn is a new friend. I also, I do have problems. You can tell I occasionally get stuck on my words. And part of that is because of my physical disability. Your muscles don't always work. And so when I'm saying names, or I also have brain fog, so remembering how to say names, but I think I've got it. Gwyn, LaRee.
Perfect.
Okay, got it. Yes. The amazing Gwyn LaRee. Okay.
Hi, and thank you again for inviting me to join this. I am Gwyn LaRee. I am a disabled Marine Corps veteran from Desert Storm, Desert Shield era. My disabilities apparently are believed to have stemmed from that service. I spent 2 years wheelchair bound because the nerves on my left side of my body just absolutely refused to work. 2 service dogs and lots of physical therapy. I am back up. I am in the world. For several years there, you probably saw me playing at Pike Place Market, playing a guitar, singing original songs with Thor, my first service dog, in a wheelchair. I am one of those intersectionals. I am a white female, cis, look very Scottish, shoulder length, red curly hair, cute little pug nose. I am wearing a black sweater with silver beads, which is just stylish. But when you look at me, you would not guess that I am disabled. Disabled people have called me a faker and a hanger-on. What are you doing in the disabled community? Why do you have a service dog? Why are you parking in a handicapped space? I've seen it all. I've heard it all. I have been berated. I have been snubbed. And I'm still here. I'm still trying. And bringing this awareness, I have many friends who've gone through chemotherapy that face the same problems. And as an actor, I know that we can do these parts. And I totally understand why many professional actors, such as Chadwick Boseman, will never admit to being disabled, because every time I hear someone say, my non-apparent disability is PTSD, I cringe, because that is what everyone assumes a non-apparent disability is. They don't think of that entire gamut. So I join into stuff like this to say, hey, there's other things that we can deal with. And if you hire disabled people, you're hiring perseverance, you're hiring strength, you are hiring the ability to persevere, adapt, and overcome, because the only reason we're here is because we can do that.
Thanks, Gwyn. So one of the things that I keep hearing everybody say is, I do all these great things, but I'm disabled. And I think the thing that I want Hollywood to realize is that it doesn't matter if you stutter to edit something, It doesn't even matter if you stutter to do comedy. Nina's hilarious. And it doesn't matter that she stutters. It doesn't matter that I can't get out of bed some days. I still directed a film or I still directed stuff in Hollywood. I've still, consulted. I've still managed to do so many things. Everybody in this group has said that they have found ways to do things. And that's why a lot of us consider disabled people the ultimate at accommodations. We are problem solvers because we have no choice but to solve these problems. But Hollywood won't give us the chance to prove it. And so we're going to discuss this in the following questions. I want to start with a little bit more overview about non-apparent disabilities. I want to ask, how do people with non-apparent disabilities deal with needing to prove their disability all the time? I don't have to do this as much in terms of my physical disability, but nobody believed me about any of my other disabilities because all they ever saw was my wheelchair. So let's start with Nina here.
Okay, so I'm so glad you asked this question because as someone who stutters, who does comedy, people think that I'm faking it all the time. And one of my jokes, in fact, is I don't fake my stuttering and I don't fake my orgasms, no matter how long either one of those two things take. So that is my general rule. But what is interesting to me is I've gotten really tired of trying to prove that I'm not faking it, because what I found in doing the comedians with the Disabilities Act, when it was a guy who used a wheelchair, another guy who was blind, another guy who was a little person or is a little person, and that was performing about 10 years back, is they thought we were all faking it. They thought the guy, Michael, who used a wheelchair, they thought he was faking it. They thought the blind guy was faking it. They thought Steve Danner, who's a little person, was faking it because he didn't look like a traditional little person in terms of what they thought that was. And I think there is, I don't know if it's a cognitive dissonance that people are like, you know, you're just as good as I am. You can't be disabled. You have to be faking it in some way. And even though I think we have to prove it a lot, we also have to at some point say, fuck it. People are going to think whatever they want to, and that's it.
Thanks, Nina. Anybody else want to chime in?
This is Anita. I find that because I was born with disabilities and I acquired disabilities. And so I was born with hidden disabilities and acquired hidden disabilities. Later on, I acquired more visible as I had to use mobility equipment like wheelchairs, scooters, rollators that, then the disability became visible. For me, what hurt me more than anything is because I expect the ignorance of the non-disabled community, of society. I don't like it, but I expect it. What I didn't expect was this from the disability community. Ableism, lateral ableism is rife in our community. I've been told that my epilepsy didn't count as a disability. Or you're autistic. No, you can't be autistic. You're not like Rain Man. Because I have multiple sclerosis. I use a wheelchair part-time. And a lot of people, including disabled people, think if you use a wheelchair, you should be in it at all times. You shouldn't be able to transfer anything. And that's not true, And so when, say, for instance, I'm in a grocery store, or something, and I'm trying to reach to get something, there's no one around to help, or my friend that's with me is also in a chair and can't help. Then, I have to kind of get up out the chair and lean up and get it, to which then, my friend who also used a wheelchair, makes these cruel jokes about, perpetrating and faking and all of that. So that's, and I mention that because sometimes I think that lateral ableism and whatnot impacts, especially when there's so much stigma around invisible, invisible disabilities, and you haven't approved. Because I've also been told, "Oh, you look so good," or I have chronic pain. My average, if you go by that silly number system, my average level of pain every day is a 7 to an 8. And people say, you don't look like you're in pain. Why aren't you, but when you're in chronic pain, when you have chronic pain, you learn to deal with pain differently than someone who's not used to pain. So I think that we need to educate the disability community as well, so that we then in the disability community can turn around and educate, or kind of push Hollywood and the media, at large to see us as people and to not make assumptions when you can't see something. Don't judge. If I tell you I'm in pain, believe me. If I have a seizure, don't say I was faking. Really, people. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel, is that I expect to go through hell from non-disabled. I don't expect to go through hell from disabled. We got to do better with ourselves.
Absolutely. And you tackled our second question, Anita. My physical disability is a neuromuscular disability. It's called spinal muscular atrophy. And I've had a really interesting disabled trajectory with that, because I walked until I was 16. So if you just saw me sitting down, you would have no idea I was disabled. So I went from nobody knowing and even my physical disability being kind of non-apparent to a wheelchair user, to, and before that, if people saw me walk, I had a gait, which is like a limp. So that was visible and got me a lot of ridicule as well. But I also now have the perspective of I'm hyper visibly disabled. So I've been at all these different stages and I've seen how I've been treated. Well, as someone with non-apparent disabilities and visible disabilities, in the neuromuscular disability community, I always felt like I didn't belong. And I believe some of that was because I had other disabilities, and it was recognizable, not even though it wasn't visible. My ADHD came out in different ways, and it was undiagnosed and nobody really knew about it, including myself. But people knew despite that. I think that a lot of non-apparent disabilities are visible in some way. And I think it's almost a misnomer to call them non-apparent disabilities because of that. But because of that, I was kind of castigated, and I felt very castigated from the main disability community, because I'm not just one, I'm multiple representations of disability, and because of that, I feel that when you are physically disabled, people see the disability and they automatically dismiss you. When you have a non-apparent disability, that disability is completely disregarded. So it's like the opposite spectrums. And when you have both, you get dragged in opposite directions. And that's been my reality. So does anybody want to comment on do you feel the disabled community is as guilty or more guilty of stigmatizing non-apparent disabilities? Gwyn, do you want to start with you?
Yeah, it seems like the disability community has been under attack. Oh, I'm still muted. Am I?
No, we can hear you. You're all good.
Good, sorry. The disability community has been under attack for so long. And I believe it's a response to that attack that they don't want fakers and hangers on. Over the last 15 years, we've seen this rise of the victim mentality and, oh, feel sorry for me because I'm disabled. And people who've been living with disability for a very long time and dealing with the persecution and everything, we're kind of reactive to that. And that really works against members of the non-apparent disability community, because everyone's trying to figure out what the truth is. So I don't think it's mean-hearted in any way. It's just, society has pushed us to this point, and now we're trying to react and figure out what is true, who is willing to work with us, and who is not.
I definitely agree with that. but I still think for those of us with non-apparent disabilities, it's still not fair. You know what I mean? But I do agree that a lot of the problems with that the disabled community faces is the result of how we're treated and perceived in society by society at large. And a good example of that is going back to the neuromuscular disability community. I can't tell you how many times I've had to argue with people that someone like you, Gwyn, deserves a wheelchair accessible parking space. You know what I mean? Because they say, well, we have wheelchairs, we're more disabled. I hate the concept of more disabled. You can't measure levels of disability. You can't compare them. They're just so different as experiences. I can't say that I'm quote unquote suffering more than anyone else because we don't have a measure of quote unquote suffering. We don't have a measure of pain in the same way. What's painful to Anita is not the same pain level as someone who doesn't have chronic pain, for example. You know what I mean? So we're all working on different skills. But I've heard people with physical disabilities say, thank God I don't have this quote unquote non-apparent disability. And that is stigmatizing. That's because society has pitted disabled people against each other. It's better to be visible disabled person than someone with an intellectual disability is what we hear all the time. And that's not okay because one, how do you know? You don't have those experiences, and those who do seem to be, a lot of the people with multiple disabilities, we're fine with ourselves. We learn to live as we are in a society not made for us. So Tree or Dylan, do you want to comment on the disability community or anything said thus far? Tree?
I would. Honestly, I'm kind of speaking from my own perspective of my experience from in my own disability community, say within my own family itself. I am a product of sexual abuse and with PTSD and ADHD. My family, on the other hand, they have their own disabilities, but they've always judged me and assumed that they would say I was bipolar, which was not a healthy way of resolving or finding a productive solution to the situation, or also too stuttering. In school, I took a lot of speech therapy classes. That's why I take a lot of my time. I pronunciate and I speak. The biggest hurtful thing in my family was, oh, you're speaking too white, or just so, quote unquote stigmatism. I've seen the example of, I would say, some of the people that I know through in society where they have disabilities of their own, but they're trying to shield theirs, and they try to cash you for yours in public. And I think that's wrong. And I think that we all should be supportive and working together to not attack each other. It's not conducive to to attack and not find a positive solution and work harmoniously together.
Absolutely. Dylan, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think everyone spoke, or they all took the words out of my mouth. But I will say though, it's just that it just kind of, like the way that the disability community, like how they react to the non-disability community. It's just, I think we do have to be better with messaging, instead of like, oh, like, why don't you accept my disability? Or why don't you how do you not know that this is a thing? Why don't we educate them? We have to tell them these things. We have to let them know about it. And sure they won't acknowledge it right away, but we have to take those baby steps to lead them that way, to have them be more accepting of it. It's kind of like tribalism, where like everyone like in like the disability community is like in their own bubble, and the non-disability community is in their other bubble. So it's just a matter of like equal communication between both sides. So.
Dominik,
Yeah,
thanks, Dylan. Dominik, Lourdes has a question from the audience. Is
Yeah,
that okay if she asks
absolutely.
that? Okay.
I was hoping we could do questions at the end, or would you prefer we answer in the middle?
Oh, well, we got 25 minutes left, so that's up to you, but Lourdes just texted that she has
Sure.
a question from the audience. So.
Sure. Yeah, let's do the question real quick. Do we have the question yet?
Lourdes.
I have it. I can go ahead and read it for you all.
Okay, great.
As a person with a history of stuttering, I find it incredibly empowering to hear others proclaim proudly that they stutter. What troubles me is when others say that I have overcome my stuttering, that I persevered in my struggle with disfluency. More frustrating, though, is when President Biden, who holds the bully pulpit, refuses to say he stutters and instead insists he beat it through hard work. My question to the panel, those who stutter and those who don't, is how do you feel when others with a hidden disability aren't, quote unquote, able to acknowledge it because they see it as a deficit?
Does anybody want to go first? I mean, I could start. I think that I don't judge other disabled people about things like this, because being disabled is very stigmatizing. And when I was younger, I had a lot of internalized ableism. I hated myself. I hated being disabled. I didn't want to be associated with other disabled people. And if people had turned their back on me and said, go away, and people did, there was like some major disability leaders who I really wish would have said, you're this kid. I was just a young kid, and I had a lot of suicidal ideation about it. I really needed people to say, hey, it's okay to be disabled, because nobody had ever told me that. And so we don't know where these people are coming from, what stage they're at in accepting themselves as disabled people. So I also look at Joe Biden as he's from a different generation. That doesn't mean that I let him off the hook for anything, seriously, but he's from a different generation. My dad was deaf. My dad was born in 1933. He's deceased now, sadly. But I'm from a Polish family. My dad grew up in a Polish enclave. And when you're Polish, you're not deaf. You're not disabled. You're especially when you're male, you're tough, or you get beat. That was the reality. So my dad was not deaf. Like he was deaf, but he wasn't deaf. He never said I'm deaf. He didn't talk about it. He was ashamed of it. And he had a negative perception of himself and that from that standpoint. So he would never acknowledge that he was deaf. But had he not grown up in that enclave where he was literally, beat up for being who he was, or mistreated for being who he was. I remember in the late 80s, I watched my dad get kicked out of a church because he wanted to be in the choir, and they said, well, you're deaf, you can't sing. And we never talked about it. We just never talked about it, because there are things that older generations just don't talk about. So for me, I look at, who is this person? Why are they not talking about it? But also, yes, I'd love for people to be able to acknowledge that, but I recognize we live in a society that doesn't encourage it, and in fact encourages us to keep quiet. So how can I judge other disabled people when I myself was, hateful towards disability before I understood that it was okay to be disabled? Nina, do you want to answer?
I think about also because I'm.
Anita first, and then Nina. Is that okay, Nina?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you
No,
said
it's okay,
Anita.
Anita. You can go first, friend. I know because you can't really raise your hand easily. So, yep. I know Nina's cool with it. She gave the thumbs up. So you go ahead, Anita.
Oh, thanks, Nina. Now what was I going to say? Well, so I'm the daughter of an immigrant, and I also, it's easy, I think, sometimes to lose patience, and I know I have sometimes, but I think about the fact that I'm the daughter of an immigrant, and I think about the fact that, yeah, we're US centric, but I try to think about the world stuff, and there's a lot of people with disabilities who are dealing with cultural implications of their disabilities, and that in their culture, I mean, I noticed that, sometimes if you're from another country, you sometimes have an idea about disabled people that, we in America, especially, that we're those of us who are disability justice and disability rights activists, we don't. So I try to, I do try to educate, I try to have a little, some grace and understand that a lot of us in the disability community do, we deal with internalized ableism. But I think that people can be, educated, and people, can learn to address and deal with their internalized, ableism, because yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like the older I get, the more I realize that I was hard on disabled people when I was younger, and I didn't give them this grace, and they can be educated, and, you can teach older people, new tricks. I taught my grandfather that you could be trans and it's okay. And he was 96. So if we can teach that old dog, it's okay to be trans, you can teach anyone. I fully believe that. Nina, you are up, friend.
I have so much to say about this. So thank you for this question. And I forget who it was, but I really appreciate it. When the Democratic convention came on, I braced myself because I was like, oh, here it comes again. It's the I chopped down the cherry tree and I told the truth trope that Biden has around his stuttering. And it's like, I overcame it, and isn't that great? Meanwhile, if you stutter, you hear his stuttering still because he talks around stuff. And people mislabeled that as dementia and as him not being smart for a long time. And so there's this, and during the convention, I was very happy to see that he brought on Braden, who is a young man who stutters, and started to change the narrative there. But that overcoming narrative sucks. And that is the one common thing that we have with people who have more apparent disabilities, is that society sees success with a disability as overcoming it. And what I always say is that I don't ever overcome stuttering, I overcome assholes. And some of those assholes live inside of me as well. And that is my own internalized ableism. And this is why the narrative of Biden and the narrative of many people, and you can look at them all on the stuttering awareness poster, because on the stuttering awareness poster, a lot of those people don't stutter openly. And that is the narrative that we have to change. And that's why it's important for us to be represented in film, in TV, in podcasts and in comedy, all of that stuff, to show a different kind of representation, because that overcoming thing is bullshit. That is a narrative we have to overcome. The only thing we have to overcome is the overcoming. And if you get nothing else out of the ReelAbilities Festival, it is that we need more diverse perspectives and stories, and making it so that we are telling our own truths instead of the truth from a society that thinks we ought to be fixed. And with
Absolutely.
I got so much to say, but I'm going to stop there.
We have 10 minutes to let you guys know.
Seriously, Nina, and this really addressed the question about I visibly cannot hide being disabled. You've said already, Nina, that you can. If you have to, you can. And one of our questions was, what is the implication? Well, Biden, we just heard there, Biden is the implication, overcoming is the implication. I'm going to have Gwyn answer next, and then we're going to turn. You really made a really great segue, by the way, Nina, into our next question, which is about representation, and we'll get into that. But first, Gwyn, let's have your thoughts on this, on what Nina said.
Thank you. I was born in the 60s. I was raised with that old idea. And when my disability presented, when my life fell apart and I was really focused on living, totally forgot about acting. It was just get through the days. As I got healthier, I earned my bachelor's degree in theater and special education. But in my head, my asshole was telling me, you can't pursue a professional acting career because you look too disabled. No production is going to accept that you're coming on set with a service dog. So I kept myself down until 7 years ago, finally reached out to Hollywood, finally started doing indie film work and finding people that were willing to work with me in my disabilities. And I discovered this amazing community. Gail Williamson is a disability advocate for years. She immediately took me on, got me out onto very professional auditions. And I had to leave her because as I was working, trying to build a career, I was getting healthier. I was becoming less apparently disabled. Now she can't represent me because I don't fit into her classification. And I did it to myself. I could be doing guest stars regularly if I had started back when my mobility and my brain got to the point where I could, but my own ableism held me back. And that's something that we all have to overcome, because so many disabilities, I know eventually I'm going back in the chair. The doctors have guaranteed it. They have no idea why I'm in remission. So I'm going to make the most of the time I have that I don't have to sit and spin. But now I know when I do return to sit and spin, I'm still going to work. I'm still going to bring these characters to life and show you it can be done.
Absolutely, Gwyn. And I think you made a really good point. When we say overcome, everybody hears overcome the disability, but that's not what you said. You said overcome the ableism, and that's what we're overcoming. There's a really good, and I don't know who came up with this. If somebody does, feel free to shout it out, but there's a really good analogy about overcoming disability for those of us with physical disabilities. We said, oh yeah, I'm surely going to overcome those steps. Because no matter what, I can't climb steps. There's no overcoming steps. You just can't overcome things like that. What I do overcome is the ableism that put the steps there to begin with, and get accessible entrances. You know what I mean? We're overcoming ableism, and that's what we're trying to overcome in Hollywood right now. So let's delve into a couple questions about that. We have about 10 minutes left. So the question is, how does Hollywood portray non-apparent disabilities? And does it help break down or stigmatize non-apparent disabilities? So what do y'all think? How have you seen your disabilities or other non-apparent disabilities portrayed? Gwyn, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll take this one because I'm watching the breakdowns. And what we are seeing in the last year is very specific breakdowns calling for people with apparent disabilities only. They want scarring. They want amputees. They want something that the audience can see so the audience knows, oh, look, production is bringing disabled people into our shows and our entertainment. These are also people that their disability can be a part of the storyline. Hollywood writers have a really hard time understanding everyday characters can have disabilities. I may walk funny. I list to the left, something terrible. I can still work in a store. I can still be a principal. I could still be a lawyer. But they are not going to cast me for that because they're going to go to my website and they're going to say, oh my God, she's a disabled vet. She has PTSD. We can't have her on set. I'm one of the nicest freaking people in the world, and I make really good snickerdoodles. You want to have me on set. I can also fix stuff. But those perceptions are what we have to educate against. And it's going to take time. We've got allies in the Casting Society of America. Russell Boast is working tremendously on our behalf. But we need 20 more Russell Boasts to say, why can't we have this character be deaf? Why can't that barista sign in getting their order? And we need more. We need more people from the executive suites to accept that disability, we aren't in the 40s. It doesn't need to be hidden in an institution. We're here.
Anybody else want to talk about representation of non-apparent disabilities? And also, what are the long-term consequences of this representation that we're seeing? How have you felt your disabilities have been represented, and what's the impact of those on your community?
This Anita, I find, from what I've seen in my experience, it's been mostly like cancer or heart problems, or maybe lung. They present them like people are like in a fatalistic way, like people are dying or gonna die. It's always this kind of gloom and doom, kind of, better be dead than disabled, or people are always struggling. I guess I wish that they could just do a story where a person that happens to have a disability, there doesn't have to be a storyline around your disability, or you could say that, this person has diabetes, or this person has a mental health condition, or that's just living their life. You know what I mean? To me, it just seems like non-apparent, any disability, really, it's either you're overcoming it or it's so tragic, and you're going to die. Oh, feel sorry for me, and yeah, like I said, I just want to see less catastrophic, just let us just be ordinary people living our lives, but we happen to have this non-apparent disability. Yeah.
And that'll come when we get more disabled writers, more disabled directors, more disabled actors. Let us tell our stories. Let the disabled community be in all aspects of disability production, or film and television and other media production, because we are here, we do have skills, we have stories to tell, and we want to tell them. Anita, you said something really interesting when we were planning for this. You said, me and Gwyn were talking about disability representation in film, and you said, I'm sorry, but you're talking about white disability representation. And I was thinking about how you're autistic and how all of the portrayals of being autistic are white. They're almost exclusively male.
Yep.
You know?
Well, because when I was a kid, I wasn't diagnosed autistic until I was in my 40s, because when I was a kid, I was born in the 60s as well. And Black people were not diagnosed with autism, and particularly girls, certainly not Black girls, diagnosed with autism. It's still, in this day and age, hard for Black people to get diagnosed autistic, because our behaviors are conflated with criminality, rather than, regular autistic, stuff. And so unfortunately, the very representation of disability is white. White is the default. And so the face of disability is white, and that's why you have overwhelmingly white representation, and male, and two, you look at when Black folks are cast, with disabilities, we got it because we was in a gang or something like that, either in a gang, or if you want to put a positive spin, maybe they were in the military, but usually we got our, disability through some act of violence, and so, disability representation has a long way to go, because, we're just scratching the surface of that, because when people think about disability or disability representation in Hollywood, they are really thinking about white folks. And, Dominik, you're right. You put autistic folks on there, and they're almost all, to a person, almost all white guys. So, yeah.
And I just wanted to add there real quick, which is that I see this a lot in stand-up comedy. The stand-up comics who get on TV are white dudes. And I personally think that executives think that if there's any kind of intersectionality, that people's heads are going to explode. And until we can give the public more credit than the executives do, like, those kinds of images are still going to persist, and that intersectionality needs to happen. It's happening in the UK, but it doesn't happen here as much. So, Anita, everything you said, yes.
Dom, we have to hand it back over to Steve in a minute.
Okay, I was just going to say closing thoughts. Actually, I just wanted to ask one more question of everyone. There's a movement for characters with apparent disabilities to be played by actors with apparent disabilities. Just yes or no, do you think that this should also be true for characters with non-apparent disabilities? And also, how can people better support, just one line, how can people better support those of us with non-apparent disabilities when it comes to representation and inclusion in Hollywood? I'm going to start with Tree. Yes or no to the one question, and then one line.
Yes. I just think they should just represent us better by including us more, in a lot of Hollywood itself.
Dylan?
I say yes, and I'd say they should just support us. They should just support us better by having the people that actually have the non-apparent disabilities educate the people with that are non-disabled.
Nina, you're up next.
Auditory discrimination. Okay, so yes, those representations need to be played by people who represent that, but also we need to have steps to get there. So we need budding access in the beginning in order to get to the places where we can win an Academy Award. Second, I forget what your other question was. Oh, what was it?
What advice for inclusion?
Just fucking do it. Okay, there.
Okay, Gwyn, your turn.
You want me to follow that?
Yes.
Yes. Please train. The one way that we can get both apparent and non-apparent disabilities in front of and behind the camera, you've got to do the work. You've got to be working constantly. Show them that we can do it.
Okay, and Anita, closing thought, last thought.
Yes, to question 1, 2, reach out to us and give us the plum stuff. You know, when you reach out to us, make it meaningful. Don't tokenize us, but do the work. Don't leave it up to us. Do the work. Hire us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Dominik. Thank you, Tree. Thank you, Dylan. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Gwyn. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Nicole, for interpreting beautifully and quickly. And we'll turn it back over to Steve. Thank you so much.
A big ReelAbilities Los Angeles thank you to our panelists from ADA Lead On Productions and Lights Camera Access. There's so much more to discuss about non-apparent disabilities, ableism, and how we look at disability internally and externally. Thank you so much again. Now to our audience and our panelists, take a quick break, grab your popcorn, then join activist Danny Woodburn right back in this room at this Zoom link at 2:40 p.m. Pacific time for an insider discussion about what one of our partners, Warner Media, is doing around disability inclusion and the industry. Thank you again.